Okay, our passage today comes from the Dalai Lama's book, Ethics for the New Millennium, page 46. Self and others can only really be understood in terms of relationship. We see that self-interest and others' interests are closely interrelated. Indeed, within this picture of dependently originated reality, we see that there is no self-interest completely unrelated to others' interests. Due to the fundamental interconnectedness which lies at the heart of reality, your interest is also my interest. From this, it becomes clear that if my interest and your interest are intimately connected, in a deep sense, they converge. Let us take a deep breath together and rest in the silence. From this awareness of oneness, let us speak this affirmation to the collective you of all humanity, plants, animals, Mother Earth, and the cosmos. I honor the interconnectedness of all life and know that your interest is also my interest. I therefore allow God's love to guide me to think, say, and do that which is in the highest and best interest of us all.
That was lovely. So well done. So, we continue on with our overall theme of the year, which is spirituality in action. Because spirituality that we just practice on our own, it has a certain level of effect for sure, because we're changing our thinking and we're part of the great soup of humanity, and it does have an effect. This year, though, is about bringing our spiritual principles more fully into action in our world so that what we are, what we think, what we say, what we do is a pure reflection of what we hold to be the highest truth. So let's breathe that in. So February is a month that we are focusing on the quality of oneness, the idea or the principle of oneness, interconnectedness, unity, and that we practice seeking the common good, seeking the common good. So what I would like to do is begin with a story. This is a story of a nurse who brought a young Marine to the bedside of a dying man, an older man. And when she came to the older man, she said, "This is your son who is here." And she couldn't arouse him, so she had to repeat it several times. But finally, he was in an oxygen tent. He reached his hand out and took the hand of the young Marine and gripped onto it with great looking for some strength, looking for a way to gain some comfort. Because what had happened is he'd had a heart attack, and he was so deeply sedated to prevent the pain that he actually couldn't even tell whose hand he was holding. He could just feel that encouragement and could feel that love. So the young Marine sat down beside him, and all through the night he sat there offering love and strength with the squeeze of his hand. And the nurse would check in on him from time to time. And she said, "Well, why don't you take a break? Don't you need some rest?" And he refused. He said no, he was going to stay there and be by be by this man's side. So this continued on throughout the night, all night long. And then when dawn came, the old man made his transition. He left his body. And so the young Marine let go of his hand and walked out to the nurse's station and told the nurse. And she began to express words of sympathy. And he interrupted her and he said, "Wait a second. I've never met that man before in my life." And she was surprised. She said, "I thought that was your father." And he said, "No." He said, "No, you don't understand." He said, "I realized it was a mistake when I saw him." He said, "But that man needed a son. That man needed a son. And his son wasn't there. So I stayed. So I stayed." These stories that we hear that are heroic in nature, that demonstrate the greatest expression of the human heart, really touch us deeply, don't they? And why is that? Why is that? And I'm going to go back to the very premise that we're talking about this month, which is that we are all one. We are all one. We are all truly interconnected. We have something actually called mirror cells. We're able to, just by observing someone, hearing a story like this, or observing someone offering love and compassion to another, our hearts are touched deeply. That's the nature. That's the nature of who we are. And when that doesn't happen, then often it's because of some false beliefs, some ideas of separation, some beliefs that somehow that person is separate from me or people are separate from me, and and that's where actually that is the source of all suffering, isn't it? The Dalai Lama's work is his books, actually two of his books that I'm drawing from this month. One is an older version, which Lori just read a quote from, which is um, the um, the ethics of the new millennium. And there's a newer book that is Beyond Religion, the ethics of a whole world, of a world that is whole. But the same basic premises are offered in each one, and that is the interconnectedness of life, our oneness. And if our humanity and our planet are to thrive, not only just survive, but thrive, then it's going to be love and compassion that are going to make the difference. So when we talk about, I am here to make a difference, we are the ones to make a difference, we're talking about cultivating that thing called love that is already within us, extending it, expressing it, developing empathy. Like I said, empathy is fairly natural, but it can get clouded by false belief and by experiences where we were hurt in the past. And so it sometimes it takes some effort and using our minds actually to move us forward and break through the barriers that we've created around our hearts so that we can be more available for each other. Let me come back and get myself reoriented. Okay, so all of this thing called love. One of the things I notice about love, and maybe you notice this too, is that when we extend love to others, it grows in us. Have you noticed that? Love does not get depleted. It grows. It has a really interesting nature of growing the more that we give it. So it's not like we expend our love and then it's all gone. No, it actually grows as we give it. So this is that beautiful law of giving and receiving. that we talk about here quite often is giving is actually receiving. They're one and the same because love expands as we extend it. That reminded me of, again, we're talking about interfaith harmony, how all of these principles run through the different teachings. There's actually a huge poster that I saw and actually received one at the World Parliament that had the Golden Rule as expressed in all the major world traditions. And they all basically say this: be kind to others, or treat others as you would like them to treat you. And then the deeper meaning of it, I'm just going to shift it a little bit. I was thinking about this. Being kind to others is being kind to yourself. So it's actually deeper than just treat others the way you want to be treated. It's being kind to others is being kind to yourself because of our oneness. Isn't that cool to think about? And it's true. It's for me. It's so true. So the young Marine in the story had some awareness of this, didn't he? He heard the call of love of this man who was on his dying bed, and he offered his love. It didn't matter whether it was his father or not. He offered his love. So the Dalai Lama, who is, of course, a great proponent of Buddhism, he is the representative of Tibetan Buddhism, writes that all sentient beings have a fundamental aspiration to be happy and to avoid suffering. That's the premise. He says this is what unifies us all: a fundamental aspiration to be happy and to avoid suffering. And then he goes on to reflect on what he's experienced in modern, because he's traveled the world, what he's experienced in modern urban society. This is what he said he's noticed. He said that he's seen in many ways greater unhappiness and emotional and psychological suffering in modern urban society than he sees in the poor agrarian societies that he visits. And after interviewing and speaking with people, this is what he says. He said he thinks the origin of unhappiness in modern society is the belief that, and it's a belief in separation, so listen to this as I say it. The belief that my happiness is dependent on acquiring external things, right? Acquiring material wealth, acquiring status, acquiring that perfect other, whatever it is. When happiness is dependent on something external to ourselves, we set ourselves up for suffering because then we're not empowered. Our power is out there. So he goes on to say that genuine lasting happiness is rooted in inner peace. And so where does inner peace come from then, right? Transcending the belief in separation. It goes back to embracing our oneness and realizing that because of our interconnectedness, relationships are important. The way we relate to one another is a very important part of who we are. That extending and expressing love and receiving love, that sharing of the love and the compassion that we are. And spiritual practice is really all about that, isn't it? When we talk about spiritual practice, about prayer, affirmative prayer that we call spiritual mind treatment, which is bringing ourselves back to the awareness of oneness and wholeness and then using the power of our word to reveal that in our lives or support others in revealing that. Forgiveness. Right now we have a radical forgiveness class going on. In that radical forgiveness class, the whole point of it is to return to love, right? It's to get out of the inner discord and the inner dis-ease and the inner distress, and to return ourselves to the energy of love, the present moment, the beautiful present moment, and the energy of love. Loving kindness meditation, which is what the Dalai Lama teaches and is taught in Buddhism, where we focus on words like, may you be filled with loving kindness, may you be well, may you be peaceful and at ease, may you be happy. And we can say that about ourselves as well. May the whole world be filled with loving kindness. May we all be well. May we be peaceful and at ease, and may we be happy. Meditating on words like this returns us to love, opens our hearts, helps us to become greater vehicles and vessels of this truth of our being. And then in the process of all of that, meditation, prayer, forgiveness, all of these various tools that we use, we cultivate this consciousness of oneness, this beautiful consciousness of oneness that gives birth to, or is a beautiful field where the seeds of love and peace and joy and wisdom and goodwill and taking social responsibility, social action, come from. So naturally, in a state of oneness, as it's cultivated, we will have concern for the well-being of others. And it goes beyond just our immediate family. It goes beyond our immediate tribe, whatever that might be. It extends to the entire world. It embraces not only all of humanity, but all plants, all animals, and our entire planet. In truth, our entire cosmos. Our heart becomes so wide and so expansive that we have great love and compassion for all. We have great love and compassion for all. And because we are one, this is the cool thing about it. The wider our heart becomes, the more compassionate we become, because we're cultivating this great inner peace and sense of our connection, it contributes to our own well-being, good health, friendship, healthy friendships and relationships, and prosperity. It all works together. Prosperity becomes a natural outpouring of oneness consciousness. We begin to flourish mentally and emotionally and physically. The Dalai Lama believes then that what he calls altruism, and to me that is just the expression of the golden rule, treating others as you want to be treated. Great acts of compassion and love lead to genuine, lasting happiness. Genuine, lasting happiness. So you see, it's all about, everything is in the context of our relationships with not only one another, but with all of life. And the thing that I want to punctuate again, which I did last week, is the importance of putting oxygen on ourselves first, so that we come from a place of overflow. So our time in spiritual practice, giving ourselves time to rest, taking good care of our bodies and our minds and all of that, is really part of preparing ourselves to come from the overflow, to then be a positive presence instead of being involved in burnout. And if anybody's ever been involved in burnout, and I have, when I was a school counselor years ago, I I experienced that, and it's horrendous. And it was because I worked long hours. I was there after work constantly. And it was that particular year. The school was overflowing with kids. There were a lot of things to deal with, and yet at the same time, I didn't do what I did the following years after that. I didn't take time to meditate and pray and nourish myself. And as a result, I experienced burnout. And it's a horrendous thing. It's not something you want to fool around with. And fortunately, I had the whole summer to recover since I was a school counselor, and I was able to do so. But then my spiritual practice became essential. I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning to make sure I did my yoga, my meditation, my prayer, to be sure that I was fully prepared for my to give from a place of overflow, and it worked. The other thing that the Dalai Lama says that I think is so important, and this is all part of this taking care of yourself. He said that you want to be sure that your outpouring of love and compassion is voluntary and in moderation. The Buddhist path is the path of the middle way. It's about living life in balance. So I love that, voluntary and in moderation. So he said you don't need to radically change your life. You can start where you are and do as much as you can. And so we can live in the question, how can I bring a little more compassionate action into my thought, word, and deed today, just today or in this moment? And what will happen is when we experience the joy that that brings and the health that that brings, then we'll be encouraged to do more. And he gives this example. He said, you don't need to try to be infinitely compassionate in one day, 1 week, or 1 year. We take the steps that we can. We move forward with moderation. And he gives the example in his own life that he owns several expensive timepieces. And he said he could sell them and build huts for the poor, but he hasn't been guided yet to do that. So he's letting us all know that, this is not about getting rid of all of our possessions and giving them to other people, unless you feel guided to do that. This is really about noticing in your everyday thought, word, and action, how can I bring a little more love and compassion into this particular moment? So I'd like us then to pause for a moment and turn within and become aware of our interconnectedness with all of life. And the principle of the golden rule that truly blessing others or being kind to others is being kind to ourselves, because we're all one. And I'd like you to repeat silently after me. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. And may I be happy. And then think of someone else and just in your mind's eye say, may you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. And may you be happy. And now imagine the whole world. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. And may we be happy. For in this prayer, we are offering the world, ourselves and the world, great love and compassion. It's a beautiful first step. And so I invite you, you may open your eyes now, I invite you all then to take this into your week. Don't just leave it here. And just begin to just intentionally bring a little more love and compassion into your lives and start noticing how you're feeling. Noticing the sense of inner peace. Notice just the greater sense of well-being. Because truly, my friends, we are one. And so it is.
And so it is.